welcome to another podcast here on Beyond Authentic Witchcraft. I'm Lisa.
And I'm Neil.
And today we've got a very, very deep and personal podcast. This deep, we go under the surface in so many ways with this podcast. I'm saying that as if people haven't already seen what it is on the title, but we are going to be talking about tattoos and the magical influence and things you can use when you get a tattoo, or if you get a tattoo, and other body adornment. So we're going to be touching on jewelry, henna, all sorts of bits and pieces. Even just drawing on your hand with a big biro can do things. But before we do, we want to go ahead and start the podcast as we should do. I think we've done this technically twice now, but it should be every time, but we've done it technically twice. So let's do our magical monthly memory, or magical bi-monthly memories. Yeah, that. So then, Neil, since the last podcast, or since the one before, because the last one we did in person here.
Yeah.
So since the podcast before, what magical activities have you got up to, if any?
Well, I came away from that fair with the tarot deck that you gave me that I started working with and instantly had a bond with, and I'm still kind of playing around with it. But the other day, a couple of days ago, I found out that there was an actual tarot deck made from Hieronymus Bosch, who I'm a big fan of, who's an artist. And I got the big old box.
Wow.
Which the creator of this deck is an occultist and he knows a lot about Bosch. And he went through all of his paintings, and because all of his paintings were so vast and epic and had so many little details, he took details from the paintings and put them into the deck. So there's some traditional images where obviously he's picked like Adam and Eve for the lovers and things like that, but then he's kind of spawned off and created their own meanings for these little details and put them in cards. It's very untraditional because there's also multiple suits that aren't your standard. But it's a lot to learn because he's kind of read into these little bits in the images and gone, you know what, that could have this meaning. And so you're kind of starting. It's not very beginner friendly or anything like that, but it comes with a great book that's like all the meanings that he's come up with, all the history of each of the paintings, what the possible symbolism was, that Bosch had intended for those things. But I'm really happy with it because I've never found a deck that I've gone, that's my deck. But because I'm a big fan of Bosch, it was like, I can't believe that I never thought to actually look for a tarot deck of his stuff. And I was just so surprised at how non-traditional this is, because I was thinking, if you look for a Bosch deck, then it's going to be just standard, usual interpretations, whack that image on and say it's that. But no, it's I'm really excited to start playing with that one.
I'm really pleased that you found a tarot deck now that you like, because we've had many conversations, especially as I've got more and more into tarot and doing it on the YouTubes every Tuesday evening, Sunday evening at 7 p.m. UK time. Just get the plug in. But because I've been doing it so much, I'm really like, I remember having conversations with you and you were like, oh, I'm not really into the tarot. It's not really my thing. I haven't got a connection with it. And then randomly, as soon as I picked up that other deck, which I can't even remember which deck it was now.
It was, I have it here.
It wasn't the Cthulhu deck. It was something like that, though.
It was the Dark Grimoire Tarot.
That's the
which
one.
is based, there's a lot of images on there that are based on H.P. Lovecraft's works, but the thing is, it doesn't come with an explanation because it's only got like the little white book.
The little
And it
white book.
doesn't say, oh, this card is referencing this story or anything like that, which is annoying, and you can't really find anything online. So, I mean, I love the images on it, but it's not really, you know. So, yeah, I mean, kind of tarot decks have been coming into my life because my friend Lorna, I'm a big Edward Gorey fan as well, an artist, and he came up with this kind of satirical deck called the Phantom
Cool.
Pack. And they're very kind of macabre, very dark, humoured cards, which are almost kind of like what's the word? Like, is it like divination cards? What are those?
Yes. Oracle
Yeah.
cards.
So they've all got their own kind of strange illustration, and then just there's a little book that tells you, oh, it means these horrible things are going to happen to you. But you know, just as a kind of little curio, they're great little cards. So yeah, I've had a lot of cards drift into my life.
A lot of tarot stuff. Well, I've got to say, Neil, there may well be another deck coming your way soon, because I've been looking at what decks are coming up in the next like 3 or 4 months. Not because I'm interested in buying any more, you understand. But there's actually a Necronomicon deck coming out.
Okay.
It's got nothing to do with your zine, because I did go, oh,
One day.
I know, one day. But there is a deck called the Necronomicon deck, and it is based on the lore of Necronomicon and wherever that was all from, and it's all a thing. So yeah, so if I remember to, I will send you the link to when it's coming out. There's been a few, because interesting that your magical month has been very tarot based. Mine is always very tarot based, because obviously I'm a tarot reader, that's what I do. But there's a couple of other things that I've been planning, but one of the things I've been tarot wise looking into is this deck, which is the Witch's Wisdom Tarot. Now, this was actually sent to me by one of our mods, by Patricia, who is absolutely lovely, and she sent me this, and in amongst a lot of other ones, which I still need to finish editing that video, and it's a really, really intuitive deck. And so, yeah, it's one that I am not quite ready to read with on the live streams yet. Yeah. But it's getting there, if you know what I mean. It's like, yeah, we're not far from it. So if I show you just a couple of the artwork in this, it's like we've got instead of it being the last card being the what's it called, the world, we've got the Council of All Beings. So it's a very different, and the cards are all in different orders, and it's basically a whole different system based on the tarot. So again, this is a bit more like oracle cards as well. And then you've got the main tarot suits. So I've been looking through that and kind of getting to know that. I've also been finally sitting down and actually reading properly the sigil book that you sent me 100 years ago. So I hadn't ignored it, but what I'd basically done is pick it up, reading the thing, and then go to that page and go, oh, okay, what do I want to know about this? And I've actually gone back and I'm reading through the beginning where it talks about Osmond Spare.
Yeah. That's right. Osmond Spare.
Osmond Spare. Yeah, I knew that. I knew that was his full name. Austin Osmond Spare. Yeah, I knew that. So I've been reading about that because on the other channel, the Beyond Authentic Health and Beauty, I've got another channel if you didn't know. On that channel, I have gone back to Slimmy World, and I am focusing on my health. There's all sorts going on in the background with my health, but we're now focusing on it quite a lot, trying to get the weight off, trying to do other things. And what I want to do is I want to come up with a sigil for weight loss that's personal to me. And then that sigil, depending on what it looks like, I'm actually planning on maybe getting that tattooed, which goes back into today's stream. And today's podcast, not stream, but today's podcast. So yeah, so there's things around that I've been doing, and I want to put together, again, I talked about it on, I think it was one of the live streams. It might have been on a members only, actually. But I've got this new, there goes my book, my bookmark. I've got this new book, this lovely green journal-y type thing, and it is going to be perfect for a herbal grimoire. And luckily, I had these cards come in from Witchcraft. And so the idea is that I'm going to glue them all in, and I'm going to hit the books, literally go through all my books and connect, okay, basil, what does basil, what do I use it for? And let's write about, I use it in this way. This is the correspondences for basil. This is how I use it. This is what I do personally. So that is a project as well. That is kind of an ongoing thing that I want to, again, it's very much back burner at the moment because I haven't had a lot of time, but that is something that I'm beginning to go, right, let's pull these books out. So there's a lot been going on that sort of level, but also it was the full blue supermoon.
Yeah, it was.
I love it, right? I know you don't do a lot of social media, but if you're on the TikTok or you're on the Instagram, and on Threads, I'm on Threads, by the way, Beyond Authentic Witchcraft. Join me on Threads. It's Twitter for people that don't like Twitter, I guess. But yeah, they always talk about the full blue moon, and they go, or supermoon, they go, it's going to be so big, and you get this picture, and they've enlarged the moon, so it's like just over the side of it, like there's a cityscape, and it's just hanging on the cityscape like a UFO in War of the Worlds or something. It's this giant thing, and then you go, oh, and then it actually happens, and you go, it's a little bit bigger. Just
it's the moon.
Yeah, you
looks
go,
like
oh,
the moon.
what's this big? Now it's this big. Oh yeah, it's very different. Thanks. But I did do a little mini ritual for, because I don't really do the monthly moon cycles because I forget, my brain's buggered. So I did a little mini ritual just in a kind of, okay, let's just accept this energy. It's the only blue supermoon we're going to see until 2037. So the next blue supermoon, when the moon is that close and we get 2 in the month, is 14 years away. So there you go. There you go. So it was a little bit of a, we're probably not going to see this one for a while. So let's just have a look. So yeah, that's pretty much been my month. A bit more organizing in the back, a bit more preparation for Halloween, which I'm dead excited for already. I know it's barely September, and I'm dead excited for Halloween already. So yeah, so that's pretty much been my magical month. A bit of maintenance, a bit of top ups, a bit of shoring up some wards and some protection, but apart from that, it's just been same old really. Apart from everything else I've done. So yeah, so anyway, that's our magical monthly magical memories thing. So then, Neil, let's talk about today's podcast episode and what we want to discuss, because this is a subject that you and I have talked about in passing and in different ways for years, about our various tattoos, and you know, do some of them have meaning, do some of them not? And I don't think it's anything that we've ever properly sat down and gone into deeply, because it's always been, oh yeah, you know, my tattoos have got this meaning, blah blah blah, yours have got this meaning. When we're talking about tattoos, obviously we mean ink, but a lot of this will ring true with things like jewelry and henna and temporary things as well. So although we're talking about the permanent tattoos that we've got, some of the meanings and how we interpret them and how we use those tattoos in practice, if we do, hint, spoiler alert, that can ring true of people that don't necessarily aren't able to get a tattoo or don't want a tattoo for whatever reason. So then I guess the first question, Neil, we can see on your arms, on your sleeves, you've got a fair few tattoos. How many have you got actually on your body?
I tried counting them, and I'd say at least 22, I think, because there's a lot where I've had a tattoo done, then years later had it branch off, and so I'd say I'd class them as about 22, I think. And how many do you have?
Again, technically 7, although I count them as 6, because 2 I got for the same purpose at the same time, and they are intrinsically linked. What sort of designs have you got? Are they all like weird and witchy? Have you got like, this is a cartoon stick man with a lawnmower on your nethers, and this is you know, this is Daffy Duck, and this is whatever, Mickey Mouse because I was pissed in Ibiza and that's what we got. Is it that sort of tattoos, or are all of yours like thought out magically tattoos?
There's quite a mix, but I mean, I think the majority.
Hang on, you mean there is actually a I got drunk in Ibiza and came home with this manky tattoo?
No,
Please
nothing
tell
like
me there's
that as
not.
yet.
Okay.
Nothing like that as yet.
As
No,
yet.
not really out completely. But there's a lot of magical ones, not necessarily that I've got intent. There's a lot of illustrations, like old woodcuts of witches and things from books and pop culture witches and things like that. But there is some that are, you know, magical symbols and have intent behind them. But I've got a lot of ones to do with anatomy, and I've got ones to do with like cryptids.
So
And
it's like an anatomy tattoo. Is that just an arrow going hand, elbow?
well, I've got kind of like different
No.
I've got different like bones, like different like animal bones and things like that, and models and things like that. And I've got some ones that are like cryptids, like goblins and Fiji mermaid, and then I've got some art ones as well, like Max Ernst and Hans Belmer, and kind of, yeah, so quite a mix of ones. But I do like grey scale tattoos. Like I don't really like colourful tattoos, so I kind of like to look a bit like an old sailor, you know, kind of the old blue and
Where they go a bit blue and faded, yeah.
Yeah. So what about yours? What are yours?
So I've got, technically all of mine are black, apart from for those of you on the that are listening to this. This is the one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to zoom it in any closer. Oh, I might. No, I'm not going to bother. I was going to say I might be able to get the other camera on, but I've got a goddess tattoo just sort of halfway down my breast on the left hand side, so it's kind of over my heart. And it's a pagan goddess, the sort of stereotypical idea of what that looks like. But she's actually holding, instead of holding, quite often she's cupping a ball or the moon or something. I've actually got a heart that she's holding, and there's a large heart where her belly is. And it's decorated in the trans flag colors, so it's blue, pink, white, pink, blue, and then faded and sort of, yeah. So that tattoo was done specifically for my friend Willow, who passed away a few years ago of cancer, and she had a similar tattoo of the goddess, but hers also wider because she was a thick girl, like I'm a thick girl. So it was kind of like, it wasn't the same as hers, but it was based on hers, if you like, with the thicker goddess. And then I've got the two hearts to represent friendship and love and all of those lovely things. And then because obviously I'm trans, I wanted to have the trans flag colors behind it, just so that it represents, this is who I am. And this is who, as a transformative moment of coming out and transitioning and all of that, it's engaging my inner goddess. And so for me, it's got layers and layers and layers of meaning, as well as it being something that, you know, if I connect to the Empress card, for example, it's the same sort of vibe, and it's that Earth Mother. Not that I work with goddess deities or anything like that anymore, but it's that sort of connection for me. So that's the only one I've got in color. The rest of them all have meaning. So yeah, they all have meaning. So they are, I don't have a Tweety Pie because I was drunk in Ibiza type situation. I don't have any of those. So yeah, so for yours then, I mean, I'm probably going to show more as we go. So your tattoos, like, when did you start getting them done? Because obviously you've got to be 18, so I'm assuming you were at least over 18. And were they designed from scratch? Were they designed, are they the same? Or did you do that thing where you're like, oh, I'm 18 and I really, really love 9 Inch Nails, so I've got their logo tattooed on me, and I really love, you know, whatever, Jesus and Mary chain. So I've got their design on my arm, whatever it might be. I'm not calling you out for your taste in music, by the way, but like, did you get ones that you then had to go, oh no, I don't want this, or have they all? Because you're quite covered. So like, have you planned? This is what I want here, and this is what I want here, and this is what I want there, or was it just an ad hoc thing?
I mean, I started getting tattoos when I was probably about 19. No, actually about 18. And some of my first tattoos were
I thought you were going to say you were like 14 then for a second.
Yeah, 14. I'm the type, aren't I? Yeah, started getting them when I was 18, and actually kind of the first few tattoos I got them covered up. Not necessarily because they were
It was
bad.
Treaty Pie. It was drunken Treaty Pie.
No, I've still got my first tattoo. But then my other ones, they weren't necessarily bad. It was just that they were in the way of the map, because I started then planning out where I would actually like to have things. So
map.
Well, you know, kind of just my arms, you know, thinking, oh shit, I had that one done there, and I could have put that there, and you know.
So when you say map, do you mean like in a 1980s Goonies type adventure where we have to wait for you to die and then skin you and then go and follow the map to find your treasure? Do you mean that sort of map?
Yeah, like, I mean, you could say that. Yeah. Okay. They got in the way, so I had to go over them. So
like an actual, you've got an actual map,
no,
like a geographical map.
No.
Oh, what do you mean? You just mean placement?
Yes.
Oh right.
Yes.
Okay. For a sec, I was actually thinking, what map? Like, have you got a whole pirate existence I didn't know about all these years? There's these gold doubloons somewhere. We're just waiting until the time is right to dig them back up.
No. Gosh. No, I think the only tattoo that I've got my earliest tattoo is the key that I've got here on my arm. That is the one that you can see. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of, I class that as one of my first tattoos, is that key, and that's the one that started everything off when it comes to realizing that tattoos can have some magical purpose. Mm-hmm. How old were you when you first got your
21? 21. So my first tattoo I've still got, it's exactly the same as it was, bit faded, bit bluer, but it's a dragon design that I've got on my arm now. Mm-hmm. Tattoo itself was something I'd seen in a magazine, right? So I'd seen this design and I thought, oh, that looks a bit like a dragon, and I showed it to somebody and they were like, no, it doesn't. And I was like, yes, it does. Look, imagine if you did this with it and that with it and change this and change that, that would look like a dragon. And they went, so basically, Lisa, what you're saying is it looks nothing like a dragon now, but if you were to completely redraw it, you could make it look like a dragon. And I was like, yeah, pretty much. And so that's literally what I did. I took that basic design and then freehanded it for weeks and weeks. I was making a little change here, a little change there. Am I happy with that? I didn't know where it was going to go or what size it was going to be, but I knew that I wanted it to look this particular way as a dragon. There's some hidden images in it. So I've got the Chinese sign for fire, because I was born in the year of the fire dragon. I'm a Chinese zodiac. I'm a fire dragon. And it's got a magical number in there. And so there's all these little connotations that are woven in, because right from the very beginning, I mean, again, I was 21. Right from that moment, I knew it would have purpose, and I knew that it would be something that would be with me forever. And it was one of those things that I was like, and again, people around me were I remember my dad at the time, because my dad had tattoos. He was in the Navy, so he had all the naval anchor and like topless lady and all of that stuff. And he was like, you know, you might regret it one day. And I was like, not this one. This one's going to be with me. I'm never going to get this one covered up. And it's a little bit tribally in its design, which obviously these days ages me horrendously, as that was like a early 2000s, late 90s fad. But I love it, because it's where the dragon that we call Rocky. Again, I'll put a link up in the corner up here if you're watching this on YouTube to when we talk about my dragons and the tulpas, egregores, servitors, thought forms that they are. But because I knew it was going to be so closely linked to that, it wasn't going to be something that I would ever really cover up. So yeah, that was my first one, and I got it done by an amazing artist in Leeds at a tattoo place called Ultimate Skin that have won many awards, and it was done by one of their original artists who then went to Spain and did an awful lot of, like, opened his own shops and everything. He's doing incredibly well. So yeah,
I mean, it's good that you sat down and spent time and designed all those. I mean, the thing is with me is that a lot of mine are from illustrations and, you know, kind of old vintage things, and you know, I like woodcut old etchings and stuff like that. Like on either arm I've got a different witch, like that's from different medieval woodcuts, and you know, obviously to do with the anatomy things were things that were illustrated, and yeah, just general illustrations and things actually just taken from, you know, kind of books. And I mean, I've got somewhere I've kind of got in contact with the people who actually drew them, and it's like, is it all right if I had a tattoo of this? And they were like, oh great, yeah, do it, you know. So
do you have any that are part of your everyday practice in the same way that my dragon is, like that are part of your magical chaos sort of self?
I think most of them are kind of almost just represent what I'm about rather than they're useful. I mean, a lot of the kind of mix of kind of pop culture and witchcraft are just, they kind of really symbolize my kind of path. I mean, for, you know, instance, I've got a lot of my influences on here. Like the first ever book that I got obsessed with was The Worst Witch by Jill Murphy. So I've got the illustration, one of the illustrations from that going down my leg, and then I've got an illustration from the Doomus Club, which was a book by, I can never pronounce his name, but that name, Revert, maybe. And this was a big influence on me in my early 20s. And it's a story about a guy who is given a task to go and hunt down copies of a book that was written by the devil. And in the book, there's all these different illustrations, which he compares between books to see, you know, which one could actually be the devil one. And so I got one of the illustrations from this, because that kind of really pushed me into exploring magic more, was reading that book. And it was around the time that I joined the IoT, and so that has that connotations. And because it's a detail from the illustration, it's representing duality and things like that. And then, say, thinking about other pop culture ones, I'm a big fan of the Silent Hill games, and there's a symbol in Silent Hill called the Halo of the Sun, which is a made up seal. You know, around the time I got that, I was kind of using elements from that game in my magic as well. So there's a lot of little things that kind of remind that, like for me, like my tattoos have at least 3 meanings behind them. They have to kind of encompass different things. Like, for instance, I've also got the seal of King Payman from the Guisha, but it's also because Hereditary, which that demon features in, is one of my favorite films. So it's kind of, I like that mashing of things that I'm into kind of in a pop culture way with magic. So
Are any of yours particularly like chaos symbols or sigils or anything? Have you ever had those sort of things tattooed?
I've
Because I know you work a lot with sigils, don't you? So
yeah,
like, have you ever tattooed any of those on your body, or like chaos symbols, or
yeah, my recent tattoos have actually been the most on the nose ones. Like, oddly, they're the ones that I'm obviously, that's what they are. You know, they don't have any kind of hidden meaning behind them. Like I've just recently got the Chaos Sphere here, the 3D version of it. That there, it's very you see, it's very black because it's very new. I've also got a Lucifer one here, which is another path that runs parallel to chaos, which I'm sure we're going to talk about that one day.
Yeah, we will.
One of my, and the most recent one is the ones on my wrist that I got, which are very, see, I'm all blurred out at the moment, which is Solve and Coagula, and these are very, very meaningful to me, these tattoos, the recent ones, because these are running through old scars of mine that I've always been self-conscious of. They're old alchemical words, which basically mean to break something down into its raw components and then form them into something else.
Okay.
So for me, it's almost like those words can be interpreted as destroy and heal, for instance. But so it has that kind of emotional meaning for me, but also because, I mean, it's used quite a lot when it comes to portraying Baphomet. And
Okay. Yeah.
on the old kind of Eliphas Levi illustration, Baphomet has Solve pointing towards the ether, and then it has Coagula pointing down towards the earth, so the material. So for me, it's kind of keeping one foot in, 1 foot in the kind of spiritual and the kind of practical.
So it's basically the as above, so below type.
Yeah, situation. I mean that's another thing as well. It's that and that as well. But another kind of very, very interesting, I think it's my most interesting tattoo, is that kind of message where the spiritual and the kind of mundane is I have on my foot, on the bottom of my foot, I have this little face, which obviously you're not going to ever want to see because you hate feet.
I hate feet. On the bottom of your foot, like on the bit that you walk on?
Yeah, on the sole of my foot. Yeah. What it is there's a graphic novel.
So you're walking on a face?
Yeah, walking on a face. So there's a graphic novel.
There's certain clubs in London where if you walked on someone's face, you get paid several £100s. So, you know, why not? But, like a velvet glove cast in iron. Ooh.
Yeah, one of my favorite graphic novels by Daniel Klaus. And in it, there's a storyline in it where men keep waking up with these particular faces on the bottom of their feet. And they build up this whole spiritual movement around it. And they believe that they've been kind of marked as, you know, these kind of high intelligent, highly in tune with the universe, you know, men. And then it turns out, spoiler alert, it's just that the police are tattooing them on the bottoms of people's feet when they're drunk and passed out for a laugh. And they've kind of, you know, read into it too much. So it's the whole thing again of that's a very good reminder to me of not everything in life has to have a meaning, has to be a spiritual thing, has to be a sign. Sometimes it can just be such a bizarre and simple logical explanation. So that's something that kind of keeps me kind of grounded. So I think mainly my tattoos are all about reminding kind of me of my spiritual values, I think.
It's sort of the idea that a white feather can sometimes be just a white feather. It doesn't mean that it's, you know, messages from the ancestors or anything, as people generally believe. Now that's really interesting. That is really interesting. I like that idea of having the mix from the sort of the more magical with your 3D chaos sphere and that, and then also having bizarre references to things that only Neil would actually cross-reference. Like it's just very, very you. I like that. So I've got, I guess I can talk about these on my wrist. So they're not because of any scarring or anything. Hang on, there we go, like that.
Stars.
Yeah, if I do like that, the 2 pentacles are there because when my mum started to get poorly, I was channeling lots of energy her way, lots of healing energy.
Yeah,
we still do that on the live streams from time to time. I'll grab candles and we send healing positive energy to people. But what these were there for is because the way that I worked with and I say worked because I don't do it in this format anymore, but I used to work with healing energy, and it used to be that there's a receptive and a projective hand. So basically the left hand is the smaller one, the right hand's the larger one. And the idea is that I would take energy, receive energy on the left, pass it through my body. And as I was doing it, I'd kind of filter it, adapt it, sort of control it, enhance it, all of that, and magically alter it so that when I projected it, either in person for mum, or like, which is a bit like a Reiki thing, or you know, distance healing, it would be expanded. So if you actually look, the two stars, hang on if I can do it like that, they're not the same size. Like there's not enough of a difference. Hang on, let me do it this way. There's not enough of a difference in the size if I put them like that. That you would kind of, anybody just looking at my arms wouldn't go, oh, they're mismatched. But there is a noticeable difference when you actually hold them close together. And so those stars were there for that reason. And basically it was a dedication to the universe and an honorific for mum that actually this is what I was doing and this is the path that I would follow. And it's kind of like the idea of, I don't pretend to be a healer, but a lot of what I do has that at its core, and has that element of, and again, I've talked on the podcast quite a bit about, I came into magic via crystals and healing energy and all of that. And it's still with me to this day. I still, like with my other half, and even with my dog, I've got a 12-year-old, 13-year-old Staffy who's got some hip problems. And invariably on an evening, she'll get up on the sofa and I just put my hand over her hip. And she just looks at me, and it's like there's a knowing connection because I'm sending her the particular sort of energy that can help with that. And so I still do that, and those tattoos are part of that. Obviously, the crow I got after the first cancer surgery. So technically, there should be a second crow coming in as soon as I figure out what design I want, because I'm going to end up with 3 crows, because 3 crows have always followed me for years. So there's probably going to be another one on this arm. So I've got a crow in flight on my left hand. There'll probably be one on a wire or pausing on the right one, because that's where I'm currently cancer free, but I'm not all clear. And then when I eventually get the all clear, that's when there'll be another crow in a different, like I'm toying between the idea of a crow that is eating, so it's like picking through dead flesh, because again there's that sort of, the crow is the healer, the dead flesh is the cancer, so there's kind of imagery among that. And then the other 2 I've got are on the outside of my wrists where you'd normally keep your watches. And this, the one on my right arm was the first one, and it's a triple moon. And then I got the sun a couple of years later, and I got these at a pagan camp. And they are stick and poke tattoos. So they're literally done with a bit of bamboo and some vegan ink. And you literally, the guy was like, right, where do you want it? What do you want it? Blah, blah, blah. He might have smoked some substances. I might have joined him in smoking some substances. Menthol cigarettes I'm talking about, obviously. And yeah, so I ended up with the triple goddess. And then I don't know how well it's going to pick it up. There you are, look on camera. The shading inside wasn't supposed to be there. But then I was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if it looked like an actual moon? And he was like, I can do this. And then on this side, yes, it's the sun. You can see it looks like a kind of sun, but also, can you see the dark cardinal points? It's a compass. And the idea is that it will always lead me in the 4 directions. So from a magical perspective, because I am crap at remembering in any apartment or house I have ever lived in, which side is fucking north, because I just forget, and I always go, right, get the, so now I've got the compass on me. So as far as I'm concerned, wherever I'm facing is north, because the compass says so. So there is a meaning behind it. Also, the number of splayed bits has a meaning. Again, it's connected to a spiritual number for me. And again, this was stick and poke by the same guy. And he basically, when he did my triple moon, he retired. He said he wasn't going to be doing it anymore, and he wasn't going to camps. He had moved out of the UK, and then randomly, at the very last minute, he was supposed to be booked into this event. It cancelled. So at the very last minute, he was like, "Oh well, I'm free this camp weekend. I'll see if there's a ticket available, and I'll come along." And I happened to be at the camp that year and got him to do this one. So I've got the two now, and they match. And it also, as a liminal witch, I love the fact that my body is literally between the sun or the sun and the moon imagery. I am the connection between the two. And then obviously as a trans person, I've got that connection as well, because the moon is linked in with the goddess and the sun is linked in with the god. As somebody who's transitioned, I will always carry an element of both of those sort of ideals. And so it just has so much meaning to me. And I love them. I love them.
Such a small kind of, simple thing that actually has a lot of meaning
and
behind it.
It's not a sigil, it's not prayer words, it's not like dates or anything else like that. And if somebody just looked at it, they'd go, "Oh, it's the sun and the moon." But actually the underlying thought process, it was a complete magical process to create the tattoos. Both designs were based on, like, I drew them and he copied them out. He actually made it more round because my drawing looked a bit like the B&M tarot deck that I reviewed. My moon was wonky. And so all of mine have specific meanings and have been done for a specific reason.
And they have uses as well. Like the only one that I've actually had a use for was like when I started my work with the IoT, I was having a talk with my mentor at the time because I wanted to get into urbex, urban exploration, which is exploring abandoned buildings. And he said, well, the only thing that's stopping you is like doors and keys and having the right key. And it kind of made me start thinking about, like, okay, maybe I need a tattoo of a key. And that's what I did. And I went out and I got a tattoo, like, of a very, very standard skeleton key. And that was kind of a incentive and a bit of a, kind of put me into a headspace of, well, I can actually do this. What I wanted to do was urban explore. So that kind of had a meaning for me at the time, thinking that was kind of my sigil to actually be able to get into these abandoned places. So that had a magical use, kind of even subconsciously, really. That had a use for me. Whereas I feel like I don't have any active tattoos. I mean, there is ones that I would like to get that would be active ones. How you were saying about how your tattooists have kind of known, the intent and stuff like that, whereas the tattoos that I've had, I mean, you've mentioned Ultimate Skin. The majority of my tattoos were done at Ultimate Skin. They kind of, it was quite good because they didn't ask, but they knew. Because when it came to going in and asking about the Chaos Sphere, I was like, oh, I'd like this design. And the guy was like, oh yeah, Chaos Sphere. Oh yeah, cool. Like, he knew what it was. And when it came to getting the words on my wrist, he totally understood like the meaning of it and how it needed to be this way up. And so he was familiar with, the iconography and the meaning and things like that. So I think as well, tattooists have got a big knowledge of kind of symbology and what things mean. And so sometimes they don't have to ask. So if somebody was going in with a certain design that had some magical meaning, you won't get judged at all by tattooists. So yeah,
I think you're more likely to get judged going in and going, "Can I have a Daisy Duck or a Minnie Mouse tattoo?" They're likely to judge you more by doing that. So then we briefly touched on it at the beginning. What would you advise people, Neil, if somebody maybe likes the idea of having these sort of magical symbols on their body, but doesn't necessarily want a tattoo. What would you advise around that?
I think you could probably advise more, because I'm kind of quite, when it comes to other adornments, I don't really wear like a lot of jewelry. I mean, there's a lot of uses of jewelry, and like you mentioned, like temporary tattoos as well, and even down to symbols and things on your clothing. And there's a lot of other ways that you can display it rather than actually getting a tattoo, because tattoos obviously aren't for everyone. So,
and one way that I know people have done is to use a liquid eyeliner. And basically, if you're doing something ritualistic and you want a sigil or you want a particular design, but you're only going to use it for that ritual, or you're only going to use it for a period of time and you don't want to commit to getting it tattooed, then yes, you can go with jewelry. I mean, I wear a locket all the time, and this has got stuff in it that is I'm not going to discuss, because it's between me and the universe that I work with. That sounds like I work with a multiverse. I don't, but you know, but it's between me and sort of the magical energies.
yeah.
So that's always on me. Equally, I have different jewelry. So the earrings I'm wearing now were made by Holland, who's one of my mods. So every time I put those on, there is a connection, there is a link. I wear a lot of amethyst jewelry, a lot of pentacle jewelry, because again, it's that same thing. It's an adornment that tallies with my spiritual practice, and if I need to, especially with crystals and things, I can charge it with intent, stick it in my pot with my selenite, and effectively charge it, or charge it overnight, and then go off and wear it, and nobody knows apart from me what that is. And I found that also really useful with my earplug, because you can get earplugs that are made out of different stones. And again, because I've got I've got an amethyst earplug, and I've got a tiger's eye earplug, which is really, really useful for helping to try and remind myself, whether it works or not in a physical way, or whether it is mind over matter. As soon as I put a particular earplug in that's made of crystal, it's like, right, I'm wearing a crystal that is designed to help calm my mind a little bit, or to help ground me, or to help with XYZ. And by wearing that, it's something that, you know, reinforces that magical intent. But if you're just doing a ritual, you could quite easily say, I don't know, say for example, you've created a sigil. You could copy your sigil onto the back of your hand. I'm just going to draw like so. We'll do something like this. So that's similar to a sort of basic sigil shape. Now, this isn't based on anything, so it's not a magical sigil and it's not charged. But you could, with a waterproof eyeliner, you could have that. You could draw all over your body if you just want it for that particular ritual on that particular day. So there you are. Look, there's I've created a sigil magically. I've charged the image. I've done everything there. I've now drawn it on. And then when you want to send it off, you wipe it off.
Yeah.
So it literally, that's it gone to do its thing. You can tell I've been reading that book. That's one way of doing it. But you can also, if you're wanting it for a longer period of time, if you're wanting it for a few days, henna tattooing, like getting the little bags of henna. And again, it's a little bit difficult. You've got to use a lot of skill. A good henna tattooist, they are worth their weight in gold if you get one done by a professional, and they last anything up to a few weeks. So again, that's a really good way if you're going for something like a hand fasting, if you've got an event coming up, if you've got a super moon on a blue moon with a full moon, whatever, and you're wanting to do something ritualistically for that. Again, it's something that you can do that isn't necessarily going to be permanent. And you can also put it in places, if you're not out of the broom closet, so to speak, you can henna tattoo your chest, or you can henna tattoo your belly button, whatever it is, any part of your body you can draw on, and you can use that with that same magical intent. And then there's always the scope for later down the line, especially if you draw it in your Book of Shadows, or keep a note of it, take a picture of it on your phone, whatever people do these days, you can then reuse that same design over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then eventually, if you're able to, if you're, you know, you're older, or you've got some added funds or whatever it is, then you could get that same design tattooed. So it's not just about, because tattoos are also really expensive. So, you know, I would love a full sleeve of Magickal tattoos on my right arm. I would love it. 2 reasons I don't. One is, apart from Amy Winehouse, I think that you've got to be a particularly strong woman to have a full sleeve of tattoos. And I loved Amy Winehouse's tattoos. And it's a bit like, oh, I'm already 6'2", built like this, trans. Do I want anything else that's going to be read as masculine by the greater world? Probably not. But there's also the fact that a full sleeve, you're talking £800-900.
Yeah,
to get a
it
full
done over
sleeve
time.
these days, at least.
Yeah.
And then all the healing and all the complications with that. So it's not something that I'm able to do right now. But again, it's something that if you just wanted a small tattoo and you haven't got the funds right now, you don't know in 5 years' time where you might be. So design it now, draw it on ritual, like copy it into your book, draw it on. If you need to draw it on every month, make it part of your magical process. And then 5 years down the line, when you're no longer living with parents or no longer have the, you know, girlfriend or boyfriend or partner that is anti-tattoo, you could then go and get it done. And again, you might be in a better financial position then.
But I think that goes in general when it comes to planning tattoos, and especially magical tattoos. I think it's best to sit with that design and for a long time, like I'm talking months, not just go out and think, oh, that'd be good getting a tattoo of that symbol and using it that way. And I think it's best with any tattoo anyways to, you know, especially to design it yourself if it's has a magical intent, but also just to spend time with that design and really think about it and
make sure you like it.
Because I mean, I think that's probably all part of the prep, and maybe, you know, charging it and making it have more meaning is kind of spending a lot more time around it. Like you say, you putting it on with makeup or henna, see how it feels, and especially when it
a permanent pen, a Sharpie.
I mean, it's because there's so many factors that you have to think about as well. Like, you know, especially, I mean, if you're trying it with henna or makeup, then it's thinking about placement. You know, thinking about, well, do I want this to be seen by people? What impact would that have on it? Do I mean, is it something that I'm always going to want to be active? What if down the line I decide that actually that's something I'm not into anymore, if it's like to do with a certain path? Or what if down the line it starts getting bad connotations attached to it? Like maybe you actually start thinking, actually this symbol is interfering in my life in somehow. Or what if, like, with me in the chaos sphere, I got it as the 3D chaos sphere because, and I've wanted a chaos sphere for a long time, but I went for the 3D one because recent years, just the flat chaos sign has been appropriated by a lot of very like extreme left anarchist groups, and I didn't really want someone to go, oh, are you an anarchist or something, and judge me for that. I mean, whatever. But I kind of opted for that, and if I would have chosen to get a flat one a couple of years ago and come into this timeline, I would have gone like, oh shit. So gone all bright now. But I think it is worth spending a lot of time with a design, really considering it before you actually get it.
Especially if it's for, like, with magical intent, if that is your reason for doing it. Because as you say, it's like the idea of the swastika. Now you only think of the Nazis. Prior to World War II, or you know, that sort of period, prior to that, the symbol was seen in a lot of magical contexts because that's where it originally came from. And of course now it's been misappropriated by the Nazis, and now it's got these other meanings, which you can say until you are blue in the face that doesn't mean that, it means this. But if 99.9% of people will associate it with something
Yeah.
that's, you know, nefarious. And that's using the term lightly. I'm in no way minimizing that at all. But if that's what people see, again, working on this idea of where thought is, it is energy, and that intent, it's now become that. It's become something dark and twisted rather than its original intent. And it will no longer have that original intent, no matter how many times people say, well, actually, I'm using it from this and I'm taking it from the original, you know, the Norse and these carvings and that carving. It doesn't matter, because all people are going to see is a swastika, and all people are going to see is this dark, the dark meaning. They're not going to get anything else. So again, I do think it's really, but also don't just like assume that because you've seen a translation of something runic, for instance, that the runes mean that. Or if you've designed a bind rune, be really careful that in that bind rune there isn't other runes visible, because anything like that you do, you've got to really, like, your intent may be to have a bind rune for victory, for example. You want to have this, you know, wonderful, wonderful thing. But if you combine 3 different runes, you need to make sure that in that you haven't got something that you're not aware of. Do you know what I mean? It's like that you haven't accidentally created a 4th rune by your placement, and then you've got this one tattooed, and then somebody says, oh, I didn't know, like, it's got a whatever, you know what I mean? You know, oh, that's for victory, but also, did you know it's also got the sign for cattle? And you go, oh,
well, yeah, it's like the equivalent of people who get, you know, you kind of like Cantonese, you know, letters, and then it turns out it means like chicken and rice or something like that. You know, I think it does. It's really, I mean, especially when it comes to symbols, for me, is doing a lot of research where else it is found, and you know, it's not associated with certain things, and could this shape be misinterpreted as this shape, and you know, and but also, I mean, just sitting with it for months also gives you time to also prepare how are you going to charge it? Do you want it to be active? How are you going to launch it? Things like that. Because for me, I mean, designing it and sitting with it for a long time is a kind of pre-charge, and then getting it actually tattooed is like used. The pain is a good form of gnosis, because you've not only have you got the pain of the needle, but you've also, if you're getting it in a strange place, you're kind of locked in that position for a long time, so you get a lot of tension. And that's a very good thing as well, because especially in chaos magic, there's a way of gnosis that's called the death pose, which Osmond Spare came up with. So that kind of ties into that form of gnosis, like a discomfort. And then for me, when it's done, when the tattoo's done, then that's it launched. I mean, there is even the kind of tattoos that didn't have any magical meaning. I used that pain as a form of gnosis for other things, you know, like so.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's a handy form of how to charge something is tattoo pain as well.
Well, I think, is there anything else you want to add, Neil, on the subject of tattoos and things?
I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of it, haven't we? I think if anyone has any questions, they can leave them below and we can answer them if we've forgotten something pretty obvious, which we probably have.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. If there's any questions at all, do well, there's 2 ways you can do it, actually. You can send an email to podcast@beyondauthentic.co.uk, podcast@beyondauthentic.co.uk, or you can also leave a comment on the YouTube channel just underneath when this goes up, just underneath, and just leave a comment there. That is going to be it from us. Don't forget to join us over on the YouTubes if you're listening to this as the audio only version. If you are watching this on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and ding your bell so that YouTube notifies you each and every time I upload a video. Also, don't forget, Sunday evening and Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. UK time, you can join me doing free tarot readings. Neil is one of our lovely moderators over there, and will soon be grabbing the title of producer, basically helping me out a little bit behind the scenes. And luckily, because he's a very good friend, it means I don't have to pay him yet. Once we're monetized, we'll have to have a conversation, because otherwise it's just not fair.
0.002p.
Yes, every month. That'll be it. Yeah, I know, right? God. But that is going to be it from us today. If you've liked it, do the YouTubey things, do all the other things wherever you see a podcast. Hit the follow button, the like button, the thumbsy uppies, whatever they're called, wherever you are, the hearts, the whatever, the nods. Do all of that, and we will be back very, very soon. And as we always say, stay you, stay true, stay authentic, and keep practicing.
Keep experimenting.
And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.